it'll be.
You know?
So, well, it's going to. You didn't hear from Karen, right?
I haven't heard from her.
Robert, yes, Robert Goodman's.
I think he's
Saw him
he's
yesterday.
like on trains with us. But thanks everyone in the room and online for waiting. We're just trying to get 2 more folks to get quorum, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But thanks for bearing with us.
Your
I think like Mike told me he's maybe.
Yeah. Right, well, sometimes you're important to see.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Landmarks Committee of Manhattan Community Board 5. Welcome to everyone in the room and online. My name is Zona Zhu, and I'll be filling in for Kevin tonight. So we have 3 items on the agenda: 396, 125 Park, and also a conversation about district needs and budgeting. So many of you are all familiar with the format of our meetings, but the procedures are as follows. Each applicant will give their full presentation, and after the presentation, we'll get questions from members of the community board. After a question from the board members, we'll open it up to members of the public, and each member of the public who wishes to comment or ask a question will have 2 minutes. If you are online, please use the raise hand if you're on Zoom. Once the public comment session is over, we'll move to business session. During the business session, members of the community board will discuss the issue and the potential resolution on the application. Following discussion, the committee will take a motion, which will be taken over by the committee. We'll vote as usual tonight, but if we don't get more people, the vote might actually be done at the executive committee, but it should all be normal. So following that, if the resolution passes, it will be presented to a vote at the full board, and the full board vote will become the official position of Community Board 5. The resolutions will be sent to LTC, any relevant agencies, and elected officials. Our next full board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 9th. And as a reminder to members of the committee, if you have a conflict of interest, please disclose before commenting and proceeding a vote as present but not titled. So I think that takes care of the housekeeping. So we can turn it over to the first application of the night, which is 390 Fifth Avenue.
We'll just get the presentation up in a second.
One time.
Why press stop?
Just one moment, apologies.
Oh, good. And when you get started, if you could, state your name so the folks on Zoom can hear that, great.
Yeah, I can actually get started without the presentation, just as by way of introduction. My name is Ward Dennis with Higgins Quays Barton Partners with Preservation Consultants. Nick Williams from Fried Frank is the land use attorney. We're going to be looking at 395th Avenue. This is an application to essentially bank development air rights transfer from an individual landmark for future transfer under the new 7542 zoning resolution that was passed as part of City of Yes. So we'll get into more detail on how this program works. I think this committee has seen a lot of applications, or a few applications over the years for Midtown East air rights transfers, and the process there will be very similar under this new program. And I will say that the program is new enough that the Landmarks Commission has not seen any applications under this section of the zoning code. I think the first one will probably be going to them at the end of this month. It's a project in CB8. So the commission itself and the commission staff are developing their thinking about this section of the zoning code at the same time that some of these applications are coming forward. So the project site is the Gorham Building, which is at 395th Avenue, the southwest corner of 36th Street and 5th Avenue. Next, please. Uh-oh. I think that one. Yeah, so it was constructed in 1903 for the Gorham Silver Company, Florentine Renaissance Palazzo style by McKim, and White. Limestone fronted building with a large arcade across the bottom. I know, by the way, I know at your last hearing, you had an application from a retail tenant for mover installation. So you're familiar a bit with the building, but the original construction did include this small section of extension over to the side that was also designed by McKim, and White in 1905. Originally, the building had its retail entrance on 5th Avenue and a second entrance for the upper floors on 36th Street. And what is now the main entrance to the building was basically a sort of shed type thing that went down to the basement. Next, please. Original drawings by McKim, and White showing the building again with the center entrance on 36, the entrance on 5th Avenue, and next. And then some details of the building in its original condition. Originally, they did have screens on the upper floors of the building, where you have this Corinthian arcade going across. They had the Ionic arcade across the bottom. In the arches of the spandrel, there were bas-relief panels. And then you had bronze balconies on both the 5th Avenue and 36th Street side, as well as a large projecting copper cornice. A lot of what's on the upper floors of the building is very much intact and original. Some things have been removed and changed. Next, please. Gorham was only in the building for about 20 years, and in 1923, Russack's, a women's apparel company, moved into the building. Russack's, when they came in, they did remove those screens that we saw at the top of the building. And they did redo all of the show windows at the base of the building. So as early as 1923, the show windows at the base were being redone. They also enlarged that extension that we saw to 8 stories, and that is still there. Next, please. And then by 1940, Rusticks is still in the building. They had done further alterations to storefronts by this time, and they had also extended the building into this property to the south. You can see they sort of extended that arcade across Fifth Avenue, one bay at that time. Next, please. And then this is just a tax photo showing that 8-story extension off the side of the building that's still there. Next, please. In 1960, the building was sold and converted to offices throughout, with commercial at the ground floor. At that point, they relocated the entrance to the building to the westernmost bay on 36th Street, with this, 1960s sort of modernist entrance surround. And that was the time that they redid all of the storefronts to, this is the condition at the time of designation in 1998, but all of that work was done in 1960. So they removed all of the arcade on Fifth Avenue and one bay around on 36th Street, and constructed, modernized the retail at the base of the building in a more international style, obviously detracting a lot from the original architecture of the building. Next, please. So as I mentioned, this is air rights transfer under 7542. As part of that, we are proposing a scope of restoration work. The base of the building, and particularly the retail, is currently tenanted, and some of those leases go out to 2040. So at this time, we can't address the base of the building. So the restoration scope that we're showing will be from this bronze frieze up to the top of the building. Next, please. And then just because 7542 is a new program, what it allows individual landmarks to do is transfer their air rights not only directly across the street as under 7479, but also across the street to parcels that are fronting on the block front, as well as transferring within the block without doing zoning lot mergers. So it's a lot more flexible than 7479, which frankly has been used about a dozen times in the 50 or 60 years that it has been in existence. And it does afford owners of individual landmarks more flexibility in moving the air rights off the landmarks, which has, from the preservation point of view, I think a twofold benefit. One is, of course, the restoration scope and the continuing maintenance plan that needs to be established to maintain the building in that restored condition in perpetuity. But the second is, by removing the air rights from the landmark, you're taking away the necessity, for instance, for owners to propose large additions or overbuilds or even demolition of the building. So the landmarks owners do get the benefit of their air rights without constructing on the landmark site. The requirements from the landmark side are that the applicant submit materials to demonstrate that we've established a continuing maintenance program for the landmark building, and that the Landmarks Commission, via public hearing, submit a letter to City Planning Commission confirming that that program has been established. There are other, it is a chair certification at city planning, and if you have questions about the city planning side of it, I know, that's outside the landmarks jurisdiction, but it is a new program, so Nick would be happy to answer questions there. Next, please. So looking at the scope of restoration, starting at this bronze frieze, the bronze frieze was actually repaired and restored not too long ago. It is soiled and dirty, and we will be cleaning that up. We will also, there's a lot of coatings and soiling and biological growth on the limestone cornice above the base of the building, and we will be addressing that. Next, please. As well as cleaning and repairs on the limestone throughout the upper part of the building. There are coatings in various places that will be removed. We will be installing new sealant and repairs around all of the existing windows. And we will be repointing the facade as necessary throughout. Thanks. There are also a lot of older repairs, both Dutchman and patches, which will be removed and redone so that they blend in better with the limestone. You can see that these stand out pretty prominently. So we will be addressing those older repairs that were done and making them better. As well as stuff like all the miscellaneous attachments over the years, the metal embeds, which if you leave them in place, they start to rust, they start to pack rust and spall the limestone. So we will be addressing those as well. Next, please. And then these very substantial bronze balcony railings, the limestone at the volutes and at the balcony itself will be cleaned and repaired. And then the bronze balcony railings will be cleaned, repaired, removing the patination and protecting that. The copper cornice also was repaired relatively recently. You can see that there are some areas where there are damage. We will be repairing that, and we will also be doing a finishes investigation on the cornice itself. We understand from historic documentation that there may have been some kind of polychromy finish on the underside of the cornice. So we will be doing a finishes investigation to see if we can uncover that, and if so, restoring that. Next, please. And then at the base of the building, as I mentioned, we're not proposing to remove any of the 1960s work because of the existing tenants. But we are doing repairs, cleaning up and repainting, as well as you can see at sort of the edges of the 1960 pieces. There are these marble clad piers that have deteriorated and pieces have been removed over time, covered over with plywood. So we'll be restoring that back to its, in this case, 1960 appearance. Next. And then at the base of the building, we do have at those arched window openings at the second floor, we do have historic windows, window sash frames and bronze mullions, and those will all be repaired and restored as well. Next, please. So this is the summary of the continuing maintenance plan, which basically once all that restoration work is done, the continuing maintenance plan covers all of those items and basically establishes that that work will be done. That is a plan that runs in perpetuity with the property. So if the building sells, future owners would also be obligated to undertake the maintenance. There is a requirement for periodic conditions assessments by architect, engineer, preservation consultant to establish every 5 to 7 years what is the work that needs to be done. That is separate and over and above what would be required under, for instance, local law 11. So next, and I think that's the end. So happy to take questions on the landmark side. Also happy if you want to get into any questions on the new zoning section side.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the presentation. If we can open up to members of the committee, if you have any questions, raise your hand and we'll get through them. Maybe one for me just to get started. I think like looking at the historical pictures, the base of the building is like so striking and gorgeous. Can you comment a little bit more on the dynamic of like the tenants in place and the ways in which, that kind of complicates it a little bit.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the tenancies, the longest tenancies it's not just the ground floor. It's the ground floor, second floor, and probably impacts tenants on the third floor if you're doing that extent of work. Redoing the base of the building would probably be a 3 to 5 year project. So even, as I said, the longest tenant is through 2040. We would have to vacate all of those tenancies, and they're of course the retail, so they're the highest paying tenants for a period of 3 to 5 years. So there would be substantial loss of income as well as the cost of doing the work. Combined, all of that would probably well exceed the value of the air rights that they could transfer off the property. So it just wouldn't be feasible for the owner to do.
That's helpful. Other questions? Steve?
So what is the application exactly? You're transferring air rights from that building to,
At this point, they don't have a site. Basically, they're getting the landmarks approval so that they can go out and negotiate a deal to transfer the air rights to one of the properties on the surrounding block. Do you want to go back to the map?
yeah, so, I want Zola, if you want to tell me.
Hmm?
I want Zola, if you want to tell me.
No, so this shows in light orange the properties under this zoning section of the code, which as I said is new, where they could potentially transfer to. At this point, they do not have a site to transfer to. They would need to have that site when they go to city planning. I don't know, Nick, if you want to
Yeah,
add
sure.
to
This
that.
is Nick Williams, Free Frank for Land Use Council to ownership. So this program is very similar to the Greater East Midtown Landmark Transfer Program, and similar to that, St. Pat, St. Bart, Central Synagogue came through here and got a continuing maintenance program approved before they had any deals to sell. We're doing the same thing here. We're getting a continuing maintenance program approved so that we can transact more freely within the catchment area.
What's the amount of air rights they're transferring?
Up to, I think the amount that's available is about 85,000 square feet.
Somebody, and then,
And there can be multiple transfers to multiple different
right,
buyers.
somebody's gonna benefit by, are they also in the landmarks? They might also be landmark, right? The ones-
No, so
No.
this is not a historic district overlay. This just shows these are all of the potential zoning lots to which air rights could be transferred from this property.
Okay, and then, so what's the intent to do, what's gonna happen to the first 2 floors? Is anything gonna be done or nothing's gonna be done, or are they gonna take the money from the transfer and try to do the first 2 floors, or?
No, as I just said, we're not proposing any work to the first 2 floors. The existing tenants, the longest tenants go out to 2040. The cost of, lost rent, vacating that building for 3 to 5 years and doing the work would probably exceed the value of an air rights transfer.
Okay, and then you're just taking some of the money and fixing up the outside from floors 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah, and as part of the continuing maintenance program, landmarks will require that we set a certain amount of money aside to basically fund the ongoing inspections and repairs in the future.
Okay.
So there will be an escrow, I think it's an escrow, right?
It'll be
Formally.
asked for that.
Yeah.
So the details need to be worked out with LPC. Again, this is a new program. We're the second application going through, so.
How much of the transfer of the air rights for? About 20 mil?
The price will be determined on a sort of deal by deal basis.
Okay.
So how long can the owner sit on this approval? How far in the future can they negotiate with a neighbor?
Nick can answer on that side, but on the landmark side, as I said, the continuing maintenance program does run in perpetuity with the
So
property.
assuming you get approval from LPC for this program and to be able to sell them, how long in the future do you have to have those conversations?
The program will be in, or the maintenance agreement will be recorded against the property and it'll just be on record. And so there's no time limit for selling the air rights after that. Once there is a transaction, that's when the obligations sort of kick into effect. And then every 7 years, typically there's a requirement to do an inspection.
Okay, and so none of the maintenance, none of the restoration, none of that starts until your first transaction?
There's not going to be an obligation to do the work until the first transaction. This is establishing the framework for what the monies will be used for from the sales of the air rights.
Okay. So if this is approved by LPC, this whole program, your plan for restoration and maintenance, there's no chance of it being amended in the future. Like, let's say that you're still doing dealings 10, 15 years out, 20 years out, when some of these lower tenants are out, there's no hope that those lower floors might at some point become included in a restoration. This is the program, whether it's
This is
tomorrow
the
or 10
program
years
that's
from now.
proposed for the restoration. Landmarks, when they look at special permit properties, historically 74-711, 74-79, they have different rules that apply to those properties, and they do take the approach that work on the property should be restorative, rather than just say rehabilitation. So it is possible, you know, if somebody was coming in the future and wanted to redo the storefronts, they would probably be in the position of having to restore back to that something like that, probably 1923. But if nobody is making an application to sort of wholesale redo the storefronts, then there wouldn't be a trigger for that.
Sure. Just one final one, Zona. And along those lines, completely separate, there's been no discussion at all from the owner about getting a master plan in place for future tenants and whatnot down the road. There's been no talk of
Not
that.
at this point, no. And we've been talking with Landmarks about it, but
Thank you.
Just one more question. So is the building currently fully occupied?
is it occupied on the upper floors, office? Yeah.
Is it all offices?
Above, obviously above the commercial, it is all offices.
And what's the zoning? Is it zoning for a commercial building or is it got,
Yeah,
it's got a residential?
C53 district, special midtown district, Fifth Avenue, sub-district. So residential is allowed, commercial is allowed.
So when we're transferring the air rights, are they gonna be, is it commercial air rights we're transferring or residential air?
They can be used for any use that's allowed on the receiving site. Residential use is subject to the 12 FAR MDL cap unless you're in the new MSMX zone, which abuts this property.
Thanks.
Yeah, when the air rights are transferred, and you just said, if I understand, the purchasers can use these within the agreement, or as they probably see fit. So my question to you is, can you address, how do we know whether what they're gonna do is appropriate? Like Landmarks, it's the whole issue of appropriateness, correct? So if you build something near a landmark that's inappropriate or changes the nature of the landmark, that seems to be an issue. Am I correct or am I missing something in that particular case?
Under the old,
I understand the old, I'm talking about in the new. How, if you just elaborate how that works?
Any
And will they
transfer,
have to come back to us and to LTC again, or it's just a matter of right, they can build whatever they want?
they can build as of right, for zoning. If they wanted to modify the zoning, which is often a mechanism for 74-711,
Yeah.
I think they would have to use a different,
that's a different mechanism.
that would be a
For the
different
pure-
mechanism, and they would have to come back.
Zoning, I'm speaking more to aesthetics.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Right, so there is not,
quite
for
clear.
the receiving site, under this mechanism, there is not an aesthetic review of the proposed development.
Okay.
In the same way that there used to be under the 74-79
So in
program.
theory, just to understand, someone could build a monstrosity or something that's, that everybody except the builder, and the owner views as inappropriate, and that would still be legally permissible. Under,
So long as it was,
as defined under the current law, what appropriateness means, and I understand that's an eye of the beholder to a degree, got all that, but I just want to just be clear, that
Yeah, there's not an LPC appropriateness review as part of the transfer process.
An LPC does not review 74, 79, 74, 711 for appropriateness per se. They review basically based on the modifications that are being sought, but not on the appropriateness of the building itself. Nick, do you want to just talk about what the procedure is, like when an air rights happens and what happens with city planning, what happens with community board?
Right, so the application is a certification, it's a non-discretionary application by the chairperson. It includes, the continuing maintenance program, it includes a report from LPC as to whether the program exists and if it's effective, whether it's being complied with. And then it includes site plans of the granting site and receiving site showing the amount of floor area that's being transferred. There is not a formal referral process for a certification. However, once it is filed, a copy is provided to the community board, and there's always an opportunity for community board to ask for a public hearing at that point.
And there was something with over a certain amount of floor area?
There is a cap on the amount of floor area that can be transferred by certification, which is 20% of the allowable floor area on the receiving zoning lot. So it depends entirely on the size of the proposed development, the size of the transfer. And if you go above that limit, then it is subject to special permit under ULURP. Our expectation is that everyone will try to do a certification rather than a special permit, but
Really helpful, and I think for the purposes of like our committee, we're not commenting really on air right transfer or land use or zoning, like we're mostly focused on the restoration plans and the continuing maintenance program and those that scope to the results today. Any other questions from the committee? If not, we can open it up to members of the public. If you're on your phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. See if we have one. I don't see any questions from our virtual listeners today. So I think we can move it into business session, and during the business session, just members of the committee are allowed to speak and feel free to share your comments, reactions. Wants to get us started.
I like the proposal. I wish that the first 2 floors would also be done, but we can't do it. I understand the status of place, but I think it's also, it's good, that even though it doesn't apply to landmarks, that the air rights have been transferred at some point, that may be used for residential. But the city right now just needs a lot more residential square footage. And I like the plan. I would probably suggest the rest of the committee to vote in favor. I'm gonna vote in favor. It's good to me. And I heard how you're gonna restore the bronze, all the bronze detail. That sounds, all good and balconies. Hopefully at some point down the road, the first 2 floors will also get done. But it seems like a very, and it seems like a lot of work went into it. It's very detailed. I think it's good.
Any other thoughts from members of the committee? How do we all feel about the base floor units?
Well, as I said last month, every time this building comes to us, it's kind of a little bit of a punch that the owner refuses to do anything about the lower levels. It's unfortunate because it's such a prominent building, prominent architects. I think we would love at some point they brought up to see a master plan. It's probably not gonna happen. And there doesn't sound like there's much we can do because this will only pertain to, well, basically what it is now, right? So that's the unfortunate part. I think along the lines of what Eugene was saying, the restoration and the program itself is really good quality. They're doing really good things with all the original features they have, like the cornice, the balconies, a lot of the gargoyles and whatnot, whatever the detail is in the reliefs. So what they're doing is really good quality. I just wish it was more. But that's not from us.
Yes. Any other comments from the committee? All right, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is it's a very robust program. We appreciate all the detail. Wish something more could happen with the base levels, but sounds like that's not feasible at this time. Does anyone want to make a motion for resolution?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second? Perfect. All right, so we will take this one to a vote then. Berstein,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Patel? Yes. I will vote yes. Jay? Esther?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. As a reminder, because we don't have quorum, we'll have to get this vote at exec, but exec will make the final decision, and then this is voted to the full board, and you're welcome to attend the full board meeting, but not apply to it. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so 125 Park Avenue. Great. Say your name loudly so folks on Zoom can.
So I'm going to start over here. I'm Cass Stackelberg, also from Higgins Way Spartan Partners. We're the historic preservation consultants, and Jeff Ellerbach, Senior Director at VAS Architects, will be making the presentation. I'm going to take the beginning and introductions, and Jeff will take you through the non-proposal. 125 Park Avenue, historically known as the Pershing Square Building. It's an individual landmark, as you can see on the site plan. It's bound by three streets: East 42nd Street, Park Avenue, and 41st Street. And the scope of work that I'm going to be sharing with you today really is just focused on the building entry on 42nd Street, but this scope is a part of a larger set of improvements that are being made to the ground floor, redoing the whole lobby. And this is all part of sort of upgrades associated with the existing commercial tenants in the building. This is a large-scale 26-story commercial office building, tenanted and is remaining a commercial office building. You can see the building, excuse me, on the left of the slide. It was designated a city landmark in 2016. And we are calendared for a public hearing at Landmarks on October 21st. Next slide. An overview of the 42nd Street elevation. I'm sure the building is familiar to you all. Park Avenue here, downhill on 42nd Street. The area of work here is at the building entry as it exists today. What is there today dates to 2006. All the work that's being done as part of this application is only impacting non-historic material, all material really that's less than 20 years old. Also just point out that the overall elevation, basically everything from this bull nose down on 42nd Street is also all contemporary materials. And the work that's being presented tonight is drawing on the materials, the details found elsewhere on the building, and hopefully you'll find that it's compatible with the character of the building. Next slide. Some additional views around the building. This is the Park Avenue elevation. You can see this arcaded base. There was historically a building entry here that's flanked by entries down to the subway. And then next slide, swinging around to 41st Street. This is the 41st Street elevation, service entry, and egress from the lobby. And you can see the overall elevation on 41st Street. Next slide. Looking at some of the details of the existing entry, again dating to 2006, about 10 years before the building was designated. All of this pink granite cladding over the piers, this glass and metal canopy, and then these steps that lead to a landing and then a set of revolving doors. So this is kind of an open air vestibule and accessible ramp here to the south side or to the east side of the entry, and all contemporary materials. Next slide. Some additional views looking east and west within that vestibule. Again, this dark stone cladding, tile cladding across the floor, contemporary revolvers, and granite and stone across the vertical surfaces. Next slide.
A few additional details, some bronze railings out onto the sidewalk and the glass canopies. Next slide. Some historic views of the building. As I mentioned, it was completed in the 1920s, 1923. As the designation report notes, it was the last tall building in New York City built without setbacks. It actually postdates the 1916 zoning resolution change, but because the footings were constructed with the overall construction of Grand Central, it was basically sort of grandfathered into the pre-1916 zoning. So you have these kind of sheer walls, and it's a fascinating building in the way it operates with the transportation network below grade, but obviously the elevations are beautiful, made of brick and small scale terracotta. It's really a richly ornamented building. Next slide. Originally, the 42nd Street entry was just a single bay, and you can see this overall view looking west on 42nd Street. It was a single bay here with this roll molding done in stone framed here. But about 10 years after construction, it was then changed from that detail, which matches the details on the Park Avenue side. Let's go to the next slide. This is the Park Avenue side, this historic photograph here with the original entry, which remains today. This has been infilled for commercial retail use since the 1980s, but it has the same detailing that existed historically on the 42nd Street side, done in granite here on Park. Next slide. About 10 years after the building opened, the entry for some reason was redone, and you can see this portal was redone in terracotta. Next slide. Looking at the existing materials, comparing it to the historic, we know just based on the detailing of this granite cladding, it's all miter jointed. You can see in this detail here, historically it had this sort of colonnette detail at the corner. All of this is non-historic. It appears to have been sort of overclad on top of what had been there historically with the bullnose remaining. Next. And then just to the next slide, an overview of the overall elevation on 42nd Street, and then Jeff is going to take you through any design principles.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and thank you all tonight for your time. As we see it today, a couple of quick notes on how the two-bay entry came about 20 years ago now. There was a Park Avenue entry as well, or access to the building that was closed off in the 1980s for 500,000 square feet of office space. This is the only entry and exit to the building. So there's a couple things happening here. We have that being the way in for the tenants. We have half of the egress of the building coming through the two bays here. And there's also, given the level change from lower sidewalk to elevated lobby, an accessible ramp that is tucked away along the east side here. So important features for the building we must maintain. But I can go to the next slide. Sorry. The architecture, the glass and metal canopy that's there today, certainly of a more modern era than the building itself. There was a dark granite painting, very steep steps. So moving that out of the way, and then as Cass noted, the rolled stone portal that we found on the original entry, and also that still exists on the Park Avenue retail entry, incorporating that into this portal for the entry, and then the paving itself using the same granite, which was part of the original entry to the building, and making these steps more gradual. The access, the descent in and out of the building is much more subtle than it is today. A few other details we'll get into with other renderings, but the original entry had wall sconces flanking each side of the entry, building identification signage. So we're looking to bring those elements back using historic materials, both the stone and the metal. Just a line drawing elevation. So this is the 42nd Street elevation from the frieze on the 4th floor down, another 22 floors above. But the extent of the scope is focused on the entry here. So this shows roughly the scale of what's existing and what we're proposing in the articulation of the piers there. Go to the next. The existing plan today, just to note, the building spans fully across Park Avenue, as you know, 42nd to 41st. This was that other entry to the lobby historically that was closed off in the 80s. And so the entry today, the two revolving doors, we're proposing to keep that. This is the ramp I mentioned, but changing the finishes within here, you know, the next, changing the finishes in here to get back to the historic materials and opening this up a bit more detail on the stairs, explain how that actually go one more here. This comparing the two, as Cass mentioned, there's currently work going on, or will go on the inside, but we're maintaining the architecture once we're past the granite piers on the outside. Go to the next slide. And a blow up of what I just said, basically. So as it is today, but this is the dark granite, high contrast to the granite piers that are on the building. So we want to incorporate that it's actually a Stony Creek granite that was historically on the piers of the building. We would bring that into the paving here as well. So it's more monolithic. So we'll show more detail later, but the railings today, which Cass had shown, are really a square modern profile. We need these obviously for the stairs for the ramp, but we would bring in a cast profile and using a statuary bronze that was historically there with the storefronts. We can go one more. Yeah, the elevation. Some of this will show up more, I think, or better in the rendering, but comparing the top here of the existing, our glass and metal canopies, or marquees, from a more modern era, and then a rolled stone portal that we're again pulling from the original entry, and also what we see today on the Park Avenue side. We can go one more. And this section on the left, the existing, and on the right, what we're proposing. So again, the marquee that's really straddling this the almost interior space already, and then also out the outside. This can easily be removed. We still have the coverage needed for tenants moving in and out. The stairs, as they exist today, are quite steep, code compliant, but very tight, and they're right on the property line. That's also a very high contrast dark granite. So we would propose, a rolled or a bullnose profile, a longer, more gradual step. And again, using that granite that was historically there. And then in the distance, we can see really the profile. We'll have more detail on this, but the profile of the wall sconce that we would we're proposing for the entry on both sides of the entry as well. As it is today, this is a close-up. Actually, sorry, just go back one more. I think this is where it really shows in some of the images that Cass had shown that the granite is it's quite dark, and it's quite a contrast. It feels very modern compared to the granite, the lighter granite that was on the building. So go to the next one. So again, the stairs more gradual, but then also bringing that material back, and then this detail is actually just showing what we understood from the existing photos of the former entry, and then what we've been able to survey and take away from the Park Avenue side. This shows a bit more, and I'll mention it now. We'll get into it some more. This is a plaque that's in the lobby today. It actually outlines some historical events that happened on the site, beginning during the Revolutionary War era, the history of some other buildings that were there, and then ultimately how it became known as Pershing Square. We're proposing to bring that, rather than buried in the lobby, bring it out towards the public. So this is something that could be accessed from anyone moving through, not just the tenants within the building. Go to the next. So from there, and we'll talk about some of these other details here on the forthcoming slides. So the original entry had building signage flanking each side, and then also I think there was even an ownership sign on the jam of the opening originally. So we can go to the next now. So proposing to bring that back. So facing the sidewalk, using a statuary bronze, which we know was historically there, building a number or street name and the number, and then the building ownership sign on the return side of those granite piers as you're passing through into the entry. Go to the next. And this is actually a detail. It's quite large, 3.5 feet by 6 feet. But this would be inlaid into the stone walls, bridging the granite portal and the front door of the lobby itself. Go to the next. So originally there were two wall sconces of glass inlays and a bronze material. This is a contemporary take on the historic piece that was there, but utilizing those finishes of fluted glass to give a warm glow to the entry. And again, this is going to be on each side of the entry. Go to the next. And some detail images. So the railing, as you saw on the previous slides, it's a cleaner, modern, handrail, square profile. But bringing, we need them. We'd like to bring back some more detail, and some of this is pulled from Cipriani next door, and just other buildings of this era that felt more in tune with the historic character of the building. The profile detail, how that will lay up against the wall, and then a detail of the stone base. So again, we saw in the previous images with dark granite, very tight steps. Using a bullnose profile, and then longer treads, shorter risers, so this feels more gradual, both going up and down. Ownership's considering, as you know, from the elevation, we have these arched, the openings within, between the second, third floor on 42nd Park and 41st. So there's consideration to incorporate a low profile light fixture within the deep recess of the sills here. And this would obviously light up the sides of that arch and then across the arch as well for a soft lighting feature. It's a linear light that's would sit on the deep sill within the arch here, and so you wouldn't see it from the street, but it would then produce light up the side of the piers and then across the arch above the third floor. So it'll give a
Walls on the top would be lit.
yeah, soft light, but the light source would be concealed within the deep. This is a view of the deep sill 1, 2, so plenty of room to pull that away from the face of the building. The materials, so historically there was a bronze framed glass, or I'm sorry, the storefront frames. So any new handrail, the signage that we had looked at would be a statuary bronze material. The Stony Creek granite, we've seen it was historically there on the piers. What's there today is not historic, but it is still the same specification of granite. We would use the same here, just with the usual molded profiles. And then that zone from the entry portal back to the glass storefront that exists today, the walls, there's considerations there. There'll be a limestone material. And this is that wall where the inlay of the historic plaque would be. And then the ceiling that's right above that is a warm white paint, which barely shows up kind of the frame of the entry itself. And then a view from the opposite direction. So it's clear that like the revolving doors maintain, where really all the work is happening beyond that. So that's the new paving, this is the ceiling I mentioned, and then obviously this Stony Creek portal that we would be incorporating.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think we're gonna open it up to questions from the committee, and maybe I can start with one. You kind of touched base on a little bit of why we're hearing about this. This is a third that on this example.
So the distinction really for landmark staff applicable projects are things either that are restoration based on historic documentation or things that meet the rules that they have prescribed for window replacement or HVAC installations and things like that, signage. So, 80–90% of the applications that come to landmarks are reviewed at staff level, but those things that don't meet that aren't restorative come to a public hearing. So this project, the design is sort of based on historic details and materials that are found in the building, but it's not a restoration. So that's why it's coming before you.
Other questions from me?
All the doors themselves are staying put, correct? Or all the doors are all staying? And this is actually a good shot here. So the limestone, can you point out the limestone material?
Limestone would be from this point back to the glass on both sides here. The vertical surfaces.
Okay. And board. How does that compare in color to the granite? Because I think you described it as pink.
It's pink-ish, yeah. And this is the materials being considered on the interior side of the lobby, so that's why it's not a third material. Both warm. This finished. This one is flamed. It's a little bit different than when it's honed. It gets lighter when it's flamed, so it'll be. They're very sympathetic. Should have materials here. Instead of me trying to explain it, you guys have to.
Yeah, polished granite is going to appear darker.
Yeah.
But a honed finish will be much lighter, so it'll be closer to the limestone for sure.
The strip lighting that you talked about, did you describe the temperature as warm?
It would be warm, yeah, or 27 to 3,000.
Okay.
You would only see it at night, so really kind of a warm glow.
And it's just on that one level of the building? Is it wrapping around to the Park
It would
Avenue,
go
41st?
from the 3 sides, but yeah, just that second above the second floor.
Okay. And then you had a close-up of the lighting itself, a schematic. You can go back to that one. It says at the bottom, like adjustable pin spot for signage. See the very bottom?
Oh, yeah,
Can you explain what that would be for when you're referring to signage?
Is there a flag?
I think it's for the plaques.
Plaques.
Oh, so essentially to shine down?
Yeah, down there.
That's my next question is any other additional lighting on any of the plaques? So it's only what would be coming out of those two fixtures.
Right, and this is the building, identification and everything, ownership name there on the champ side, but no direct light on that.
No lighting on that one. Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, where did the design for these light fixtures, like, where was that inspired from?
There, we can go back to it, like, we have a photo, I mean, this I guess wasn't original either, this came after, but this was not the original entry, but these were added at that time, so it's using, generally taller fixtures, a little less ornaments, like I said, it was a little bit of temporary take on what was there. Today, there's nothing, and when it was designated, there were no walls counts.
Great. No other questions for the committee. I'm gonna check if any members of the public have any questions. If so, please use the raise hand feature now. Okay. I don't think we have any comments from the public, so we can open it up to business session, where members of the committee can speak and opine. Does anyone want to kick us off? Thank you.
I think they take care to maintain what was a continuity and to freshen it up in spirit of what came before, because I can see there's a little bit of that hodgepodge, with the TD Bank and so forth, so they could have gone, they chose not to go in that direction. And was there a glass canopy previously?
There was, yeah, there was, it's quite, glass and metal, so.
That's being removed.
That's being
removed, so that's I think a big deal in my book. And take care to choose those materials. And I think 2,700K or 3,000. I think the evenings, especially the way it's described, it'll sit back.
Yeah.
You're not going to see it. I think it'll also be a nice glow. But that's what I was saying.
Other comments? Folks supportive of the application?
So, the stuff that we'll focus on the committee, material, right, that's a big part of what we're looking at. They do a fantastic job bringing back, the original type of granite that was there, solid bronze, replicating the light fixtures as best they can. The materials themselves are absolutely perfect for a building like this. Even the thoughtfulness of affixing things to the building. So, for example, lighting fixtures and all that going to the joints of the stone, so that should they be changed at any point in the future, I don't think a lot of folks do pay attention to kind of the what ifs of the future too. So that's something I think that's important. And even the lighting, I'm all for making these beautiful buildings stand out, but it's very soft lighting, it's a warm lighting, and it does very much, so in my opinion, justice to this landmark that you're very appropriate.
I think Tony's a mind reader. Basically, said everything I was about to mention. So, yeah, I think it's very good. Thanks.
All right, so it feels like we've reached consensus here. Would anyone like to make a motion for resolution?
A motion to approve?
Second.
Perfect. With that, we will take this to our second vote of the meeting. Berkey,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Al. I'm voting yes. Jane? Yes. Hester.
Yes.
With that, we can have Bridget here, and we will take this to executive committee for final vote, and then here at the next board meeting, which will have, thank you so much for. Thank you. Great, so we have one final item to discuss on the agenda today, which is our annual budget conversation. So every year New York City releases a budget that contains expense requests and capital budget requests, and we have a dedicated committee at the P5 who'll be working on compiling all of those. And from a landmarks committee perspective, I think our goal is to start brainstorming things that we would love to see get funded in this year's budget. So examples of that might be hiring another staff member at LPC, asking them to like run a study on a certain topic of interest for us, or to fund like some kind of like loan program enforcement. And of course, like just anything that might come up related to city budgeting needs. So I think we're not doing anything on that tonight. We'll send around like our district needs statements so people get a sense of like what CB5 has reiterated are our priorities. Housing definitely always comes up as one of them. And then we can like plan to discuss this probably at our next meeting and then submit it to our folks for budget requests. Any questions about that one?
So anything from our committee, but only in regards to, I guess, LPC, right? It's the only entity we deal with.
Yeah, so we can definitely make like a bunch of requests to like LPC, but we're also welcome to submit like anything, like if you live in front of a fire hydrant that's like in need of repair, I think this is also like a good opportunity to just like flag that as well.
So what is it exactly? We're gonna be, because
Yes.
it's a CB budget.
Yeah, it's a city budget, it's a city budget, and then
The
the
CB.
community boards for the entire New York City budget. So every year, the community boards provide input, and then as part of the budgeting process, the city will like read through our requests, and they'll like respond to them either as like, this is something that we'll take into consideration for the budget, or you need to give us more information. But it's meant as just a way for all of us to have input into how the city budget is.
Well, how much of that? It's a way in.
You can put it in Yeah, it's a lot, you can put it in request for big budget. I think it would as like a wish list for us to say like what would be super impactful, like a lot of tax requests unfortunately don't always get funded, but it's a good way to remind people that these are the priorities, like if the public library is asking for like new generators or something like that, it might not be funded one year, but it's really helpful that we keep like reiterating, these are things that we great to have, like multiple community board requests, and that's helpful as well, but wish list for things that would improve our district.
Question, aren't we asked to prioritize them? We go, I think that's an important element
Yeah,
for our district. We go from 1 to 200 or whatever number of issues you have. That's where a lot of the challenges come in amongst the various committees. Affordable housing, more important than something else. Right? Quality of life issue, marks, whatever. That's, at least for me, that's the interesting part. Because you can put everything down, you can put the whole list of things you want, but they're focusing on what's most important.
yeah, absolutely, so we'll gather our requests, and then I think John's right, there'll be some prioritization of all the requests that we'll see.
Is the public involved in this?
I am not on the committee that's doing it this year, but in the past, there's like always a process of like, there's a survey that gets blasted out through our newsletters, so residents can just like respond. And then there are usually like people who are dedicated to outreach, like various parts of the city, like everyone's reaching out to the bids, to certain like, agencies. And the goal is just to get like as many people to write in as possible.
Right, I mean, it'd be helpful, right, to have the actual community.
Yeah.
Comment, I mean, because if my fire hydrant's okay.
Yeah.
Right, but somebody else is terrible, we should know about it and speak on their behalf.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's different than the story budgeting decisions that come up, or does this like feed the ideas that come out through participatory budgeting?
I'm not.
I could answer,
on the program.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Chair, yeah, so a couple things, so, our survey, is running on the Link kiosks. So if you pass by a Link kiosk, you can see the survey and actually fill it out. So CB5 does have a survey in terms of trying to get community input. The rationale there was, we have a lot of commuters, or a lot of our community is transient. So your traditional tabling, where you post up for a couple hours and you try to flag people and do a Q&A, may not prove fruitful because the people may not actually live in CB5. It would still be important to get their feedback, but the thought here was to put it on the Link kiosks. To answer your question, John, on PB, so participatory budgeting is done by council district, right? So not done by community boards, it's done by council district. And so each council member basically has a discretionary pool of money to invest in their council district. Most of them set aside about 20% of that pot, and they basically put it up for vote of the community. So there's a whole process that goes in to kind of, similarly, people are encouraged to come up with ideas, they get filtered, eventually the PB cycle ends in the spring. It's narrowed down to like 5 or 8 projects, and the community votes on them, and accordingly, the council member would fund those projects. There's some similarities in the sense that we can put our wish list together for expenses, for capital projects. As John mentioned, we get the laundry list together, and we do have to work to prioritize them. We submit it. So if there's a request to DSNY, they'll literally give you a line item saying, it could be, unfortunately, we couldn't get to it, or we didn't have the bandwidth to process this. It could be to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, whatever it might be, and they'll give you a response. And what Zona was saying, if you keep knocking on the door, even, over time, or if that same issue comes up across community boards, the hope is that there's room at the end in the budget to.
Just to add to that, the scale of the two, they're just two different concepts. I mean, the discussion, the budget you're talking about for city council people, we're talking about several million dollars at most. When you're weighing in on the city budget, you're talking about 100 billion plus. So they're just two different concepts. One is very much a micro process where you're saying, okay, city council person can give CB5 $200,000, $100,000 for this or that. Whereas when we're in other process, we're literally looking at the entire city budget. I guess the other point, which since you're the executive committee, it's my understanding that this year the structure is different. In the past, when I was on the budget committee, it was always part of a larger committee. You had budget and education, a budget housing, a budget health, or what have you, and there were a multitude of different. There were different. The committee had jurisdiction over a number of issues. Is my understanding this year, or is it correct? You all either planning to do, or you have done it so that there will be a committee focused on the budget.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of movement, so now these folks are just dedicated on budget.
Right. That way they can just focus and get more input from all the committees, as opposed to just dividing part of their time on, working on one.
Yeah, it's a separate task force, so people from all the committees have kind of volunteered to kind of.
Great, so that's that process. We'll also send around some information on that, and we have very educated expert in our midst, and I'm very grateful. And then next meeting, we can discuss it and come with ideas, and then we'll compile a list to share with our budget task force to get rolled up for the master submission from 2045. One final statement for the recording is related to the second application that we heard today, 125 Park Avenue, the Cushing Square Building. We did receive a letter of support of the application from the New York Building Congress. Just wanted to state that for the recording. All right. So with that, I think those are all the agenda topics that we had. Now we'll open it up to the public for new business. If you're on Zoom, please feel free to raise your hand or use the *9 feature. All right. I don't think I see any new business. I don't think Mike is here to share his new business this week. So I think that concludes our meeting. Thank you everyone for dialing in, and feel free to reach out to the board office with any questions or comments. Thank you and good night.
Thanks so much. Great job.
Thank you.
We have to make the resume.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's one thing I'm thinking.